right after the service this afternoon, so please plan to stick around. But first, it is my joy, my honor, and my super, super high pleasure to introduce our senior minister, Rev Bev.
You know, normally I would give the person a hug on the way by. It's not an option. It's like, okay. And I do have the tendency, let me just figure this one out. I'm a little bit close. How does that feel, Joe? Are you good? Yes? All righty. They're taking me off the leash again. I absolutely love it. Yes, 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 yes. And thank you, Deborah. Thank you for your insights about forgiveness. You've made my job a lot easier. There's a whole lot I don't have to say right now. It's excellent. Because this week, we are talking about forgiveness is life. So in order to live freely, we need to forgive. So what we're going to be talking about is what is forgiveness? Why or how do we need to do it? And ultimately, how does it affect the whole world? Before I go into that, I am actually teaching a class right now called Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life. And I think I have a whole bunch of my students in here. Let me see. Anybody? Raise your hand. Oh my goodness, isn't that brilliant? Well, in our student workbook, there was too much that I just couldn't just leave it all out. So if you guys have read it, just know that this is a reaffirmation of what you already know. But there was this great little story about the film Gumball Rally. I don't know if any of you remember it. It was about a cross-country Italian race, and one of the Italian drivers in it that was portrayed by Raul Julia, his name was Franco. And right as they're taking off from the start, he takes his hand out and he rips his rearview mirror and just tosses it out. And he says this: the first rule of Italian driving, what is behind me is not important. I think we should all become Italian drivers. What do you think? What's behind us really is of absolute no importance. It is gone, it is done. And yet we seem to hold on to it very tightly. So one of the ways that we deal with these things we want to hold on to is through forgiveness. So what is forgiveness? All right. Deborah said it beautifully. Forgiveness is a release from suffering. It's a release from our bondages, and it's a return to freedom. It's an act of self-love. It is about a personal desire to live a life that is unencumbered with an old story, outdated belief system, unresolved anger, and exhaustive sadness. Gerald Jambolsky, who wrote this beautiful book, Forgiveness is the Greatest Healer of All. Let me tell you something, this is all you need. This is all you need. He said this, he goes, forgiveness is letting go of a better past. Because isn't that what we're doing constantly? We're constantly going back. We're constantly going back to look and see what we can change in the past that we feel guilty about or has caught us up in this desire to move forward. And it all begins with us. The whole process of forgiveness just begins with us. It begins in this place of letting go. And I was in my Course in Miracles group this last week, and a beautiful piece was shared with me by Gary Zukav from The Seat of the Soul. An authentically empowered person is one who forgives. Forgiveness is not a moral issue. It is an energy dynamic. Forgiveness means that you do not carry the baggage of an experience. When you choose not to forgive, the experience that you do not forgive sticks with you. When you choose not to forgive, it's like agreeing to wear dark, gruesome sunglasses that distort everything. Forgiveness means that you do not hold others responsible for your experiences. When you hold someone responsible for what you experience, you lose power. When you forgive, you release critical judgment of yourself as well as of others. You lighten up. You lighten up. You release suffering from yourself, and you lighten up not just you, but the whole experience. The memory of the experience seems to change. It seems to become almost frail. It just disappears when we release it and let it go. Dr. Ernest Holmes said this. He goes, remembering that spirit holds no evil towards us and that God is love, we should emulate this divine lesson and forgive all, and that our hearts may be free from the burden of our own condemnation. You know, not forgiving somebody is like drinking your own poison and wanting somebody else to die. It truly is. Because that person might not even know. That person may have no clue that you had a reaction to whatever happened. They may have no idea whatsoever. But that hurt inside of you, or your perception about the experience, just builds and builds and builds inside of you. But before we get into all of this, I got to throw a little fun in. You just know that. We've got to have a little lightness in this whole thing. So there was this couple who'd been together for many, many years. And one day, the wife made just an awful mistake. Just awful. So she apologized profusely, right away. And they made up. They made up. But true to form in many relationships, the husband would keep referring to it. He would just bring it up. Bring it up now, bring it. And one day she looked at him and she goes, what are you doing? She goes, I thought you had forgiven and forgotten. He goes, I had. I just don't want you to forget that I had forgiven and forgotten. So he kept reminding her. There's a little piece in there that goes, yeah, not so sure that he did that. But also we want to look at what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not the misguided act of condoning irresponsible and hurtful behavior. It is not. It is not a superficial turning of the other cheek that leaves us feeling victimized and martyred. Rather, it is the finishing of old business that allows us to experience the present, free of contamination of the past. Ooh, doesn't that sound good? It allows us to experience the present, free of contamination of those old thoughts, those things. Do you know that there's so many people that cannot walk safely through your mind? Have you ever thought about that? Somebody comes to your mind and you know they should be having a suit of armor because you are slaying and dicing and dissecting and throwing all the stuff at them as they walk through. And that person may have zero clue, have no idea. And also we must remember that forgiveness, our forgiveness of the situation, does not mean you want to have dinner with them. All right? You don't have to have dinner with that person. Absolutely not. It doesn't, because whatever happened, you're not condoning it. You're not making a reconciliation with the person. What you are doing is you are setting yourself free. That's all you're doing. It all begins and ends literally with you. It is your work. It works on you. It'll change your perception. It'll set your suffering free. It's all about you. And no matter how angry or hurt you feel about the situation, there's one key word that comes into play. I've referred to it before as the combination code on the lock of a great life. It's called willingness. You gotta be willing. If you're not willing to let go, if you're not willing to set aside those old stories, if you want to hold on to that hurt, if you want to go and just make it so that it's your identity, that you are going to govern your life from that place of yuckiness. Nah, there's no reason for that. None whatsoever. There's no reason for it. So we want to move forward. We have to have a willingness to do it, a willingness to begin. And so often we do get stuck in that story. We get stuck in it over and over again, and it literally will put its armor around you. It will influence how you see the world. It'll influence how you walk through life. It'll stop you from just getting into other relationships, because you never know, that person that I meet might do the same thing. Well, what have we said? You claim your truth. So when we forgive, we go to that beautiful, loving place. We go to that loving place of where we're not a victim. We take back our power, but we have to give up the desire for revenge. Anybody have a little revenge going on? Anybody? Well, revenge is a little strong. It might not necessarily be that we want to lash out, but we wouldn't mind seeing that person go through a hard time, huh? You know what? It can lie within us, we humans. We have this wonderful ego that wants to protect us. And it keeps reminding us of what went wrong so that we don't get into that situation again. We don't give ourselves the opportunity of a clean slate. You know, we had a bad relationship. We had a bad experience. So you remember that whole story that I spoke about, the box. The box is, we've created all of our memories and put it into this box. Be it a relationship, be it any experience we have. And now we sit with that box. And when it comes to a hurtful experience that you've had, you don't want to let go of that box. You don't want to let go of it. You want to hold on to it just in case you can see that red flag again. And when you see that red flag again, you can back up and go, this is not for me. I'm not going to be doing this. It doesn't mean to say that we don't have to watch our awareness. It doesn't mean to say that unskilled behavior is not going to come our way. But we can recognize it and step aside. We don't have to be in any kind of fight or flight. We don't have to be worrying about all the other stuff that comes with the life that we create that is suffering, based on this desire to hold on. There was a story about a woman. She was seeking guidance, and she had had an absolutely horrendous childhood. She had suffered neglect, emotional abuse, and as an adult, she became an advocate for children. She saw a way to undo all the damage that she felt had been done to her. She said she had forgiven her family. But then she said something very interesting. She said, my family always told me I wouldn't amount to anything. So every time I go home to see them, I always make sure to tell them how well I'm doing so that they can see that they didn't get to me. Do you think she really forgave her family? Yeah. So without realizing it, she had still kept herself as a victim, because every action she was taking was not just for herself, for her own wonderful life. It was to show her family. It was to show them, you didn't get it for me. I am superior to you because I was able to rise above it. She was still giving her power to her childhood, to them. She didn't forgive them. But the question is sometimes, why don't we want to forgive? And I'm going to read right out of this book because he is brilliant. He says, that person really hurt you. They deserve your anger, your withdrawal of love, and any other punishment they can get. Number 2, don't be a fool. If you give that person, it's just going to do the same thing over and over and over again. That person is just going to do the same thing over and over again. They probably don't even know anything about the situation. If you forgive, you are weak. If you forgive that person, it's the same as making that wrong right. Oh my goodness. Only a person with really low self-esteem would forgive another. When you don't forgive, it's like controlling the other person. There you go. There's the poison we drink and hope that the other person will die. The best way is just to keep your distance between that person that hurt you and to never forgive them. Well, you know what? I'm going to encourage you all to do completely the opposite of that. I think the best idea is to actually work through it, to go into that place of forgiveness, to set yourself free. And there are ways that we can step through it. First, you want to really know what it is that's going on inside of you. What is it that happened? Get the story straight in your head. Know, too, that story that you tell, you can share it with somebody that's going to be beneficial to you. But don't share it. Don't keep telling the story over and over again, because you know how stories grow. They just grow and they get embellished, and the next thing, they take over the whole room and they're struggling and they're strangling at you. You don't want to be doing that at all. You also don't want to have to go through the pain again. So when you get clear about what was done, you know that that's not something you want in your life, so that you can keep that at bay. The hardest part of all of this is that we never get to know why. Why did this situation happen? Why did this person do this to me? Why? And that is the most frustrating part. And that's the thing that we hold on to. It is so often not even what happened anymore. It's the not knowing, the not being able to resolve it in you, or if you can, resolve it with another. You know, we get to feel these different betrayals and confusion and abandonment. That's my favorite one. Abandonment. And you know, any of you that have lost a loved one, especially a parent or a sibling at an early age, especially if it was something that was sudden, we can all understand that feeling of abandonment. That was my story. My story was my mom passed away when I was quite young. And I only found out the day before she passed that she was extremely ill. So I found out on the Friday night. The Saturday, I went to visit her in the hospital in the morning, and she passed that Saturday afternoon. Did I feel abandoned? Absolutely. In my rational, intellectual mind, did I understand or think that she left me intentionally? Absolutely not. I knew that this was nothing that she would have done. She wouldn't have walked out and abandoned me, but for whatever reason, her soul's journey took her at that time. I know this. I've intellectualized it. I've even done my work around it, and yet that feeling of abandonment still comes up. So what happens in your life when you haven't been able to forgive it all the way? It shows up in the people around you. It shows up in friends that just walk out of your life. I'm sure we've all had that happen at least once or twice in our lives, where somebody just disappears and you have no idea why. You can't explain it. Nothing was ever said. There was no big blow up. Boom, they're gone. One more time, that feeling of abandonment comes up. So there's only one thing to do. Got to go back to forgiveness. For forgiveness is the act that is going to look us through the process of any emotions, because the answer will never come. We will never know why. It's okay not to know why, because we've got the tools. We've got the tools to work through forgiveness. We've got the tools to raise ourselves back up to this feeling and this life that we desire, this life that takes us into freedom, absolute freedom, because when we let go, we reconnect with the divine. We reconnect with this feeling of knowing that we are one with love. We are one with this magnificent intelligence. And then God gets to use us again, fully, because we've removed the blockages. We've removed the stuff that's in the way. through our forgiveness practice. And it is a practice. It doesn't just happen once. You don't click your fingers and go, ta-da! This is all done. It is a practice. It's an ongoing practice. In fact, Jesus even said, when asked, well, how many times do I have to forget my brother? 7 times? He said no. 70 times 7. And if you're interested, I have a great practice that goes right along with that. It's called the Fear to Faith practice. Some of you have done it with me. It is magnificent. And we don't just do it once. We do it over and over again because different things will come up. As we open up to forgiveness, all that is no longer serving you, all that is not life-affirming, all that is unlike the freedom you desire is going to come up to be seen. And we can work on it. And how does this affect us globally? How does this intention to set ourselves free affect the greater community of the world? Because our work is never just for us. It is for everybody. So this is what I have written down here by Krishnamurti. Krishnamurti. Sorry about that. My tongue got carried away. How can there be external peace in the world if one is not at peace with oneself? We will never answer that question. We are always trying to bring about change externally. We never seem to realize that unless each one of us changes radically, there will be no peace on earth. And that change in us is forgiveness. And Marianne Williamson in A Return to Love says this: since all minds are connected, then the correction of anyone's perception is on some level a healing of the entire racial mind. The practice of forgiveness is our most important contribution to the healing of the world. Angry people cannot create a peaceful planet. So we are here today to hear all about the different versions of forgiveness. We were in class all week discussing it. In the Course in Miracles, it was the lesson of the day. So as I've told you before, it always works us. So what are we called to do? We're called to see what is in front of us that we're holding on to that no longer serves us. Take the time, take the practice, begin the forgiveness process. Take it to practice. And if you need any assistance, we have a practitioner, practitioners. You have me if you desire. We're here to stand with you, to walk it. So that is your charge for this week. Dig in, bring it up, let it go, back to freedom. So I want to share this little piece in conclusion from the Course in Miracles. What could you want that forgiveness cannot give? Do you want peace? Forgiveness offers it. Do you want happiness? A quiet mind? A certainty of purpose? A sense of worth and beauty that transcends the world? Do you want care and safety and the warmth of sure protection always? Do you want quietness that cannot be disturbed? A gentleness that cannot be hurt? A deep abiding comfort and a rest so perfect it can never be upset? All this forgiveness offers you. And so it is. All right. Thank you. Let us take this to prayer. So right here, right now, we recognize the one power, the one source, the one universal creative mind that I call God. This magnificent intelligence that is the only activity right here, right now. And I know that I am one with it. I know that we are all one with it as it moves around us and through us and as us in all that we do, in all that we think, say, feel, and experience. And I know for each one of us that as we walk this path, as we walk out from this moment into our week, that we are so blessed and so ready and open and vulnerable and willing to take a dive into forgiveness, to look at the stories and the old beliefs that are coming up to be healed and go, I am willing. and to allow God, to send God in first. Let God lead the way. Let God put and make that path nice and clean and level. It is an easy walk. So I know for each one of us that as we do this week, we bring forth a greater feeling of freedom, of love, a greater feeling of connection, a greater feeling of purpose, and a greater knowingness that freedom in our lives is totally right here, right now, waiting to be revealed. And we know it is the truth of who we are. And I claim it to be so. And so it is. Thank you.
I am horizontally challenged, vertically blessed. This is our time for conscious giving. This time that we kind of focus in on circulation. Just as our blood circulates through our body, oxygen circulates into our lungs and energizes us. Our center is dependent upon each of us to be part of that circulation. And so here's a way that you can help keep that circulation going. If you'll stand with me as we talk about this affirmation, just repeat after me, please. Divine love, in and through me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, all that I receive, and all that I am. And so it is.